tell me a little bit about your own basic training. You were a new recruit, so how did it feel? What did you do typically?
Well, I guess first and foremost, you were scared to death. Everybody spoke loud. I never saw anybody get hurt, but I've seen people get up, some of the sergeants there get up in a fellow's face where they knew that he understood what he was talking about. So, yeah, it was, well, we didn't know what to expect, but discipline was absolute, absolute. But then when the rifle was, range was, that part of the work was done, then we did other things like handling grenades, bazookas, machine guns, and all the other pieces of, you learned to kill people. That was the ultimate goal, so you could live yourself. I guess a fellow told me one time, he said, we're going to teach you to kill the enemy so you don't have to give your life for your country. That's a pretty tough statement to make to a farm boy, but that was right. I was 19 years old then, and I had 52 18-year-old boys because they divided up the trainees by age. The oldest people were in the first platoon, and on down I had the fourth platoon. So I got the youngest people that were there. Some of those fellows, as I was 17 weeks earlier, scared to death of me because when you spoke, you had to speak with authority. And I never saw anybody that got hurt by getting talked to, but they sure got dressed down if they spoke when they weren't supposed to. I did have one young man in my territory from Bainbridge, Georgia that couldn't read or write, and I wrote letters home for him to his family. And the second time he came to me and he said, Sarge, would you write a letter home for me? And I said, I sure will. Lawson Wimbrel was his name. Yeah, I said, who do you write it to? He said, I want it to write to my girlfriend. And I said, well, what do you want to tell her? Oh, Sarge, he said, you know what to tell her. Said, tell her, though, who my platoon sergeant is and what I've been doing. And so I wrote him the best I could. Well, 15 years after I was out of the Army, I got a hold of him, and the first thing he said to me was, hello, Sarge. And the sweet little thing on the telephone that had answered it was the girl that I'd been writing letters home. So it was a successful venture.
How did that first day feel, you being the platoon sergeant with all these raw recruits? How did you feel that first morning?
Well, I guess I felt a real sense of responsibility because I was responsible for them. If they weren't where they were supposed to be, it was me they looked to. They didn't look up anybody else. So I did feel a real sense of, well, I'll just have to say that I was a dedicated soldier.
So what happened on when you first heard the word that the Germany had surrendered?
Well, we were out on rifle range, and Captain Hayes, we were all in formation, and he announced that Germany had surrendered. And he said, but we're not changing our philosophy here at all.
I hear you saying there was really no change, not much change in the atmosphere in the training.
More and more hand-to-hand combat. Fixed bayonets. We had dummies lined up a hill that you either knocked over or somebody said, staff it if it don't stink. And that's right, with more and more hand-to-hand combat. One fellow that I was with from Kirksville, and he came to me when I was at Kirksville one time, and he said, I just wanted to tell you that you was quite an example for me. And he said, I went to the South Pacific, and he said I was in a foxhole with my buddy, and he said there was a Jap snuck up behind us and stuck his bayonet clear through him. And he said he thought he did me, but he said he just stuck it through my clothes.
Mm.
And he said I fought him off with my bare hands, and he showed me.
Hmm.
The bayonet marks.
It's quite an
And
experience.
he said, I kept hollering for the sergeant, shoot him, shoot him. And pretty soon he did.
Yeah.
But he had to get him in the right position. He had him in his sights all the time. But he said he fell back in the foxhole with me.
Any overall reflections on either your time in active duty or the war years or military service?
Yeah, I wrote a little note to myself. "17 weeks may not sound like a very long time, but if you think of everything that we did in 17 weeks, it's probably the most intense time of any time in my lifetime, the things that we did. Again, I wrote a little note to myself, and I said that, boy, people that went through 17 weeks of basic training with the tremendous pressure that was on everybody, they came out a different and a better person the rest of their life. I really feel that. I've accepted a lot of responsibility during my lifetime after I got out of the Army. But a lot of the feelings that go through my mind, even yet today, here I am 60 years from the time we were in the military, but it's you do what's right, not what's easy. I really believe that anybody that went through a 17 weeks of intense training like we did, that came home and made better citizens, I guess that's about the best I can sum it up.